you to the Harlequin team for allowing me this story time of sorts to tell you guys how I got started in reading romance books. So, fun little thing is that I did not actually come into reading romance books until probably my mid-30s, and that was when 50 Shades of Grey, the trilogy, came out, and was actually all three books was out, so I didn't have to wait for any of them. But it was almost time for the movie release, and I went ahead and picked up these books, and I absolutely devoured them. I really enjoyed them. I thought that the romance was such a fun sort of unpeeling of an onion, and it had different elements of suspense as well as some issues that later we would find to be unflushed out, but at the same time, I loved the fact that it was such an easy read, and I was able to devour it. On from there, I picked up the Consequences series from Alethea Romig, and this was a series that I ended up having to wait for each book to come out, and I loved every single moment of that. And now that I have been in my romance reading journey for almost over 10 years now, it has come to, I've been through an ebb and a flow of how I like my books. Back then, I was really sort of missing and needing the next book right away, and wouldn't necessarily throw a fit, but would be disheartened in the fact that I had to wait a year or two before I got the next book. And after I found the Consequences series, the first book, Consequences, I had to wait a year before that next book came out. So during that time, I was like, ooh, I want to read more books like this one, which is when I found Sylvia Day for the Bared to You series. And I had to read each one of those books as they came out. And I also found a lot of indie authors, which I absolutely loved. People like R.K. Lilly and Corinne Michaels, who was doing romantic military romances. And as I fell down that rabbit hole of finding independent authors that I absolutely loved, I was able to then branch out and find some traditionally published books that I really enjoyed. And that brings us back to my love for Harlequin. And I would say about 2 or 3 years ago is when I was approached by one of the teams for Harlequin to really start to dive into their backlist and their books that they were releasing. And that's when I found the Desire line, and found that the Desire line gave me that perfect amount of suspense that I was looking for, perfect amount of spiciness that I was looking for. It was also a line in which I found a lot of Black authors that I absolutely adore and still follow to this day. Like, I found Naima Simone, and I got to dive into Brenda Jackson's books. I found a love for LaQuette. And then I was able to branch out and find Black authors that were writing in the other lines that Harlequin has by finding Katie Richards. She writes in the Harlequin Intrigue line. I found a love for Nina Crespo, who writes in the Special Edition line. Yes, the Special Edition line. And they have just opened up the doors to finding that I love a little bit of, I love the Harlequin line for the sort of what I have now found to be named the category romances that can give me a romance within 250 pages and a full-fledged story that has no cliffhanger, but could be part of a series. And I absolutely love reading these lines and reading these different authors. And I still love my independent romances. I have lots of independent romance authors that I still follow, like Megan Quinn. She is a romance comedy queen. She gives so much comedy with smexy times, and that her dirty talking heroes are absolutely amazing. Kennedy Ryan is another independent author that I absolutely adore. The realism, contemporariness of Kennedy's research that goes into her writing is absolutely phenomenal. Her newest release, Real, has just an abundance of history that's going to make you want to go and read about the Harlem Renaissance, as well as look at Black characters within Hollywood right now. And I love that aspect, and that ability to infuse a story with something that's new, that makes me intrigued to know more. So thank you once again to the Harlequin team for asking me to give you guys a story time of where I started in romance and where I've come and where I am at this point. I hope that you guys will continue to follow the Harlequin channel, as well as follow me. I have a YouTube channel called Steph's Romance Book Talk, and let's talk about some romances, because I like to do that. Thank you guys for watching. As always, give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy the content, and I will see you guys in another video.